I want to go to another issue now, and that is, of course, the Prime Minister's successful trip to Japan. This can only be seen in really geostrategic terms as another step in Australia sort of muscling up, if you like, in diplomatic terms against the rising power of China. Let's bring in the Executive Director of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, Michael Shoebridge. Good to talk to you again, Michael. This will be seen in Beijing as the two liberal democracies of Japan and Australia. There's two US allies of Japan and Australia just reasserting their rights and especially defence links in the region.
Yes, Chris, there's a lot of symbolism in this. Scott Morrison being the first foreign leader to meet with the new Japanese Prime Minister. That's symbolism from Australia, but it's also symbolism from Tokyo. And I think it sends a message, you're right, to both Washington and to Beijing. It tells them that these two key US allies have a whole lot of momentum in our relationship on the economic front and on the defence front. That'll be very welcome news in Washington and quite unwelcome news in Beijing.
Yeah, now, Japan and Australia, the security links, the defence links, they go very slowly. I was involved in discussions when I worked for Foreign Minister Alexander Downer 15 years ago under Japanese Prime Minister Koizumi, trying to gently start these links in a defence and a security when it comes to defence and security agreements. Now, some progress has been made, but a lot of the reluctance, of course, is still because of the way the Japanese defence forces are seen as a self-defence force. The settlement after World War II meant that Japan was not supposed to have any armed forces with any sort of forward agenda, if you like, forward thrust. And it proves difficult, really, to get any change, any broader engagement from Japan because of those historical and constitutional limitations, doesn't it?
Yes, Chris, I think you're right. It has proven difficult. So this treaty between Australia and Japan that lets our troops access each other's countries easily, the Reciprocal Access Arrangement, that's taken 6 years to negotiate. But I think the fact it's been successfully negotiated tells you the world has changed and the Japanese government has recognised that. And for people that thought this was a Prime Minister Abe special, having Prime Minister Suga take this on early in his time says, no, this is a deep direction from Japan now to be a more positive security actor, and that's what we want.
Yeah, and look, it makes a lot of sense. Of course it's not overtly aggressive to China. Of course it makes sense because Japan is a liberal democracy and is also a US ally, as I mentioned. But how do we strike the balance between not unnecessarily poking the hornet's nest in Beijing? And do you think that they show signs of just accepting this reality, or will they see it as provocative?
Well, I think they'll see it for what it is. It's a reaction to their own actions. So you look at the first three issues that the two Prime Ministers mentioned in their statement after the meeting. Unilateral militarisation in the South China Sea, coercion in the East China Sea, and repression in Hong Kong. Now, they didn't say this is all about Beijing, but those three issues are all about Beijing. So I think the media management is good, but the substance is very strong. And it really says to Beijing, how much momentum against you are you willing to create in important countries and powers?
And just briefly, I suppose the other side of this trip is that Japan is such an important trading partner for us, and that becomes even more important as we see China try to punish us through trade measures.
Yes, and the economic side of this meeting was pretty impressive too. So a very strong commitment to deepen the energy partnership and to look at high technology vulnerabilities like telecommunications and critical minerals that are needed for any high technology input. The economic partnership between Australia and Japan and Australia cooperating in Southeast Asia in defence terms and in economic terms is a big part of the agenda between us. And that's a lot about rebalancing our economic bets on China.
Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Great, thanks, Chris. I'm looking forward to you being out of quarantine up there.
Me too, I can tell you. Now, Prime Minister Scott Morrison has left Japan. He'll be winging his way back to Canberra. He is then going to quarantine at the lodge. He's not stuck in a hotel like this, but he's doing his 2 weeks quarantine at the lodge. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Even though he's got lovely grounds to walk around there and a pool to swim in and all the rest of it, I think the 14 days will test him, from my experience.